I mean, poetry comes to mind first.
Wonderful.
What's on your mind, or is that like, should I not ask you?
I love poetry, and I actually saw on your website when I was perusing it, you're working on a series of books about like poetry and cinema.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the middle of a series, I guess. Or I think I perhaps said I'm in the middle of a series because it then motivates me to keep doing it. But yeah, the most recent book of poetry is called Confetti, and I guess all of my books sort of like blend like ancient ways of thinking about the world and sickness and health and time with contemporary art and movies and philosophy. So I like to kind of see how placing, say, like a horror movie in conversation with like a 13th century mystic might illuminate them both in different ways and or explode them. So there's a lot of that going on in the books I've been recently working on anyway.
I love that, and I see why Mary had to introduce us. Shout out to Mary Wild.
Yes, we're both very into Mary Wild.
What came to mind was, I don't know if you've read Jim Morrison's first book of poetry, The Lords, but he was, he's a film student. And when he writes a lot about cinema and like from like a cinematic perspective and about the kind of like dirty underground cinema scene, but like it's all poetry, but he just like paints these beautiful like little scenes that are very cinematic and are sometimes overtly about cinema. So that came to mind when I read that you wrote that way.
Oh, amazing. I love that Jim Morrison came to mind, the Lizard King. I honestly have not read that book, but I'm kind of obsessed with the movie The Doors,
Very
which
nice.
I feel like a lot of people hate, but I think it's amazing. I think Val Kilmer did like an excellent job at being Jim Morrison.
Yeah, I remember loving it. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I did just buy it recently on DVD because my husband has a publishing company and he's publishing a book that someone wrote about Jim Morrison. Anna Leone wrote about Jim Morrison. And she wrote like about his like astrology and his natal chart and things like that. And it's so interesting. It's like, I love this book and it's going to be coming out soon. But like it got me on a whole Jim Morrison kick again where I like ordered his poetry and like ordered these DVDs and I've been kind of binging it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, I always kind of felt like if I had been alive during that time, The Doors would have been like my band, like the band I would have gone to see a lot.
Definitely. People always say you're either like the Doors, the Rolling Stones, and the Beatles. I would definitely be the Doors.
Yeah, same. But I'm glad this is where this is going. Yeah, amazing. I actually recently, not so long ago, wrote a Substack essay kind of about Jim Morrison and the Doors. He like comes to me. He keeps coming to me. So maybe I should just like cave and read his books. I don't know.
Yeah, you should get the poetry. I like to do cut up poetry, and I've been integrating because I bought like first a little paperback of his poetry, and I actually sent one to Mary because I was like, she will love this because it's like cinematic poetry. So I just sent it to her. And then I got like the big volume of like all his writings. So I've been cutting up like the little paperback and putting it into my cut ups, and it says the most amazing things. I love it.
Oh, sweet.
It's
Yeah, I
great
saw
to
that
work
you did
with.
that. It's very cool. I've never really gotten into the cut ups, but it sounds cool.
Try it sometime. If you like to write shorter pieces or articles and things, or like your Substack, seriously, print them out and just cut them up and throw them all in a box or a bag or something, just like your own writing, and then pull it out at random and see how it comes together. It's so interesting, especially when you use your writing because it's like your ideas, but like things are put together in a way you would never have put them together, and it just like sparks all these new ideas. It's so fun. I love it. I'm kind of obsessed.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I mean, I'm sure I've done it in different, maybe, I don't know, maybe I have done it and I'm sort of blocking it because the book is the most recent book of mine is called Confetti, and it's a very confetti thing to do. So it's sort of a lot of in that book of poetry, a lot of the text gets recycled and thrown up and they fall to the bottom of the page and they sort of get rearranged in different ways. So it's kind of like that, but
It's an amazing cut up.
Yeah. So there's that.
I love that. And if you like any specific artist or writer and they're like dead and you want like more writing by them, you can like cut up just like one person's writing and mix it up that way. And then you can like, it's still like their words and their like phrases. I don't cut out individual words. Some people do. I used to, but I cut out like lines. I'll cut out like lines of poetry and then shuffle it together. And then it kind of sounds like them, but they're saying something different. It's really fun.
Sort of uncanny.
It's very uncanny. Cut-ups are always super uncanny, and you're always like, how did it say that right at this moment in my life, you know?
Yeah.
It's very cool. And cutting up magical people, like that's why I threw Jim Morrison in there. Is like I've Burroughs and Geisen, who I like learned about the cut up technique from, they would cut up anything like newspapers or things like that. And I did that too for a while. I started cutting up only like artists and writers I liked or knew. And then I started throwing in more random things from magazines. Like I cut out for collages, like images from Playboy or something. And then I cut up the articles and throw them in. And it can be cool also. But I found when you just like use people you're really specifically into and rather than like random things from the newspaper, it comes out that much more uncanny and potent.
Yeah, I would imagine. What's your favorite Doors song? I have to ask.
Well, the first one that came to mind would be The Crystal Ship.
That's the first one that came to my mind. The lyrics are like spinning in my head right now.
It's
Maybe
a really good
song.
song.
Them to you. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Haunting.
Yeah. But they have it on Amazon Prime, at least here. Prime here is a little different, or all the channels are a little different. But they have like a whole concert of the Doors at the Hollywood Bowl in I think maybe 68 or something. And that concert's amazing. And it's filmed so well. It was like filmed professionally, and like he's just so fucking hot. It's ridiculous.
Quite hot.
Basically. It's so good.
Yeah, very, very hot. Yeah, Crystal Ship.
Yeah, my mom was she was into the Doors back in the day, and she was actually, I'm from Miami. She was actually at the Miami concert where he like supposedly pulled it out and got arrested and all of that. She was at that show.
Way.
Yeah.
What did she say about it?
He said he definitely did.
He did. Confirm.
She's like, no doubt. And everyone went insane apparently. So
wow. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So it's a cool connection.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, I grew up in Coconut Grove, and it's like there's a marina there where they dock the boats, and apparently they had like an auditorium at that marina, and that's where that show was, Dinner Key Marina.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've just reignited my Doors fandom. I used to be really into them in high school, and then of course I had them like in mixes and things here and there, but I'm just recently really back into them.
Yeah, same here. I had like a Jim Morrison poster. It's just so funny. I like the free association podcast.
Just see what happens.
I had a Jim Morrison poster in my high school bedroom, like middle school, high school bedroom.
I had a Doors poster from the movie, actually.
Shit.
Yeah, and I had the one that the movie poster was taken from, the American Prayer, where he has his arms out.
That's the one I had. Yes, yeah. And yeah, and then same here. Like they were always sort of there, but not at the front. And then I want to say like sometime like beginning of COVID madness, I rewatched the Doors movie, and then I started to just like I watched the documentaries, and I started to listen to all the albums again, and went like full on.
Yeah, I recently went to a record fair and I bought all the albums I could find, including these like live and bootleg things. So I'm right there with you. The Lizard King, he's got us in his grasp.
Mm-hmm. Well done.
Now you have to get the Lords. I will send it to you if you send me your address, because you must have it.
Really? Okay, I'll send him. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. You need it.
Okay.
Now, we do have you on for a specific reason, which we should talk about. Let's talk about
Yeah.
your class.
Oh yeah, I have well, yeah, it's sort of let me think how to like get into this. I'm like trying to move from Jim Morrison to my class. So I teach, I mean, I kind of teach quite a bit. And I started maybe like 4 or 5 years ago teaching sort of independently, kind of like rogue art classes and philosophy classes and things. And often I sort of use the language of alchemy and astrology to talk about visual art and philosophy and literature in various ways. So kind of like syncretic stuff and a lot of visuals and whatnot. So this like new project is called Alchemy of the Word. And actually it's not unrelated to Jim Morrison because I stole the title Alchemy of the Word from an Arthur Rimbaud poem and I'm pretty sure our friend Jim was quite into Rimbaud. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so he's still here. So
Mhm.
Alchemy of the Word is sort of, I guess, a culmination of like a few years of research on my end. I guess I would call it like sort of like half art project, half series of lectures. It's like takes the form of video slide recordings on the 7 original planets and their corresponding alchemical processes and metals. So kind of goes deep into these correspondences between the planets up above and the metals here on Earth. And then I sort of use different poets and films and pieces of art to make associations, because that's the thing about alchemy and astrology. They only really come alive. They're these languages of correspondences. So they only come alive, in my opinion, when you're kind of relating them to different things and seeing how the different planets flicker in the world in front of you, or how a metal might relate to a Jim Morrison song in some resonant way. So I think there are a lot of there's a sort of like constellation of people who I'm pulling on in these recordings. So I'm like very hesitant of recordings and the recording world. I'm sort of I'm a bit like of a paranoiac, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but I get very like I get a little bit antsy about being recorded and recording myself. So a lot of my classes are not recorded. You have to be there sort of in the moment. But these I sort of decided would only be recordings that people get and can sort of go at their own pace and work with them, because the material is super dense, and kind of the idea is to bring an art project or a piece of writing or whatever, really any project, through various stages of alchemy. And it can be linear, but it doesn't have to be. So that's kind of the idea. It's sort of like alchemy as related to the creative process and some other trippy things.
It sounds amazing. So
Thanks.
people be focused on working with something they're working on while they're like working through the class.
Yeah, although it's sort of, optional. Like one could just kind of go through the recordings and learn about alchemy and learn and like kind of take the trip through these different manuscripts. Like I go through at different parts in the recordings, these like Renaissance or medieval alchemy texts, which are wild. I mean, alchemy, the imagination is just like vast and psychedelic. And, it's like a world of really wild creatures and colors and hearts and like weird fluids. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just very magical, and like kind of it's the perfect kind of arena to bring something you're working on, because it tends to like open different portals. So throughout the recordings, I kind of switch on and off between like going into this research and talking about the different images and texts, and then like providing prompts and having like little quiet spaces for doing that.
Very cool. That sounds something I would love to do. Step is totally up my alley. Again, thank you, Mary Wild.
Yes, that's exactly what she said when I told her about it. She's like, "This is really up Vanessa's alley." That was like
I love that impersonation of Mary. That was spot on.
Yeah, that was like not.
So how did you get into all of this in the first place?
Oh my gosh, how did I get into all of this in the first place? Well, honestly, through poetry, probably, because I sort of have been a writer since I can remember. And I started actually for a book, I started doing some research, whatever poetic research is, but like maybe a decade ago for a book I was working on called Wave Archive. And this book deals with like kind of ancient health treatments, like bloodletting and things like that, and like the humors, like back when melancholy was associated with the planet Saturn, and when astrology and astronomy were one thing. So I sort of went to these older texts, and that kind of led me down this spiralic rabbit hole towards alchemy and astrology. And then I think from there, I just never left, maybe. So I've found it to be, I mean, I write poetry, but I also like write essays and write about movies and stuff. And I tend to kind of work with a lot of different genres. So for me, astrology and alchemy and these like older languages, or I guess whatever you want to call them, it seems to make a lot of sense with cinema and poetry. I mean, one way to think about astrology is like reading moving images, reading planets as moving images. So to me, it kind of opens up like a vaster web of knowledge and images.
I love that idea of reading astrology as moving images.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what it is. It's like really just a language of light, and the sun rising would be like almost the originary event or something, and then it kind of goes from there.
Very cool. What's your sign?
I'm a Virgo.
With
What's
what
your
rising
sign?
and what moon?
Sorry. Virgo, sun, Aries rising, Taurus moon.
Very nice.
What do you
think? The Taurus and the Virgo are good and stable.
Yeah, earthy with like a little fire at the
fire.
front. What about you? What are your three?
I'm Cancer sun, Leo rising, and Capricorn moon. So
Okay.
Thank the universe for the Capricorn moon to keep me a little stable too. Otherwise, I'd be even more out there. This way I can funnel my out there-ness into like a structure.
The container of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And my husband is a Capricorn, and he's like very like slow and steady. So that's a good balance for me too.
He's a Capricorn sun.
Yeah, he's Capricorn sun with Virgo rising. So that's like talk about intense with that like detail.
Precise, yes.
Yeah.
I love a detail. I'm pretty sure the astrological research that Carl Jung did had to do with like exactly your matchup. Like he found that couples who stayed together for, I don't know, X amount of years or longer, it was like the sun sign was the same as the moon sign.
Oh, interesting. And we're also Capricorn and Cancer are like opposites on the wheel. So a lot of things like overlap in an opposite way, which is always interesting Fortunately, he has a Sagittarius moon, so that also gives him like a little bit of sense of adventure. Otherwise, I don't think he would leave the house.
Yeah, the opposite sign's cool because a way of looking at that is like you like opposite signs see each other. They have like a good line of sight to each other. So there's like an awareness of things that maybe you're not even aware of in yourself sometimes that the other sign can see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, it's a good match. I was just telling you, we just had our 7-year anniversary and over the weekend. And I was remembering like the first time we hooked up, and then we were in London and we had to go. We did this conference together on psychoanalysis, art, and the occult. And we were like friends when we decided to put the conference together. Actually, it was my idea, and then I invited him to do it with me because he's a good occultist. Um, and then we were like friends organizing it, and then we ended up hooking up at the conference, which was perfect. And then yeah, when he had to leave, go back to Sweden, I was so sad. I like didn't want to let him go, and then my rational brain was like why, like who is this guy, like who cares, you know what I mean? Like hello, like I was living in New York and going to like queer clubs and having like a ball, and it was like it's just like some guy you hooked up with, but I was like deep sadness in my body having to like let him go home, and that was strange for me. I was like,
And now
what's going on here? And now I live in Sweden.
yeah, now you got to. How long have you lived in Sweden?
Officially, I got my residency end of 2018. But I left New York. I've been coming since end of 2016, back and forth. So
Yeah. It's been a minute. Okay, cool.
it's been a minute. Yeah. I'm a citizen now. And I have dual citizenship.
Nice. That's good. That's a good move.
It's kind of dreamy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain about that. It was stressful until that point, but now that I have it, I'm like, all right, now I'm a citizen. They can't kick me out. I'm good. I'm solid.
Yeah. Love it.
And then, of course, you have EU citizenship. So I could live anywhere in the EU now, which is also pretty cool.
Oh.
It's like living in a different state. It's like you can live wherever you want if you have EU citizenship. So that's pretty cool. I like
Yeah,
that
very
idea.
cool. Very cool.
Totally. What about dreams? What are your dreams like?
Oh my God. I was just talking to somebody about this. I have a lot of animal dreams.
Interesting.
And a lot of times, it's funny, I sort of hate talking about my dreams, but I'll reveal sometimes I have dreams where the most memorable animal dreams are the ones where one animal like turns into another animal, or there's like a strange hybrid combination, like a few animals in one. And that kind of thing often sometimes will make its way into my work. Like sometimes I feel like I don't give a shit about dreams, but they're like amazing. And I give all the shits about them when they're like transmuted into art or poetry.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And the creatures sound kind of like you. I read that you like Leonard Carrington and integrate her kind of thing. Like sounds like kind of the Leonard Carrington, Max Ernst like hybrid creatures they would create, things like that.
Yeah, super surreal. That's true. I hadn't thought about that. Yes, Leonard Carrington does make an appearance in the Alchemy project because I mean her work is mad alchemical. Like a lot of vessels and strange things being cooked and fire like attached to people. And her and also Remedios Varo, I think of as a really alchemical painter. And yeah,
And
Max
she's
Ernst.
amazing too. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen them, but Folger Press came out with the Leonard Carrington Tarot.
I saw. They look
Yeah,
beautiful.
they're pretty
Do you have
nice.
it? Do you have them?
I do. Should I go get them?
Yeah,
I'll go
I
get them.
would
I'll
love
be right
to.
back. Okay, look, they come in a beautiful blue box.
Oh, pretty.
So nice. It's just the major arcana. So nice. So nice.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, they're
Damn.
so beautiful. And they're
What?
amazingly printed and they're this great size.
Yeah,
I
they're
love
really
them.
nice.
They're really cool.
I like that size. Yeah, they're really awesome.
Look hard and see what we get. Why not?
Yeah, go for it.
And then like the backs are silver, which is also pretty cool.
Cool.
And then Robert Ansel, he spoke at our conference. And actually, Carl and I got married from that conference. And then Robert Ansel, who owns Folger Press, he spoke and had a table at the conference in London. And he met his wife at the conference too. She was someone who attended.
What's going on at that
And
conference?
she just posted on Aisha, shout out Aisha Shehu Ansel. She just posted on Instagram or whatever that it was their anniversary. And I was like, it's our anniversary too. Because we all got together at the same time at the same event. Let's see what we have. The devil.
Oh, sick. Oh, that's a really cool looking devil. Wait, can I see the back one more time?
Silver.
So nice.
Yeah, they're really well done. And she creates these perfumes, which I could show you her Instagram. She has a Maison Shihu Instagram where she creates these amazing perfumes, like oils. And she like put like a card of like the oil in the cards so that they smell good too. The box smells good like her perfume.
Like a
So they're a
sensory.
great little team.
The devil's a great one. The devil's one of my
The
favorites.
devil's my favorite, so I love that we pulled it.
Oh, it's your favorite. And I just finished, actually this morning, I just finished the silver portion of the alchemy project. And so I've been thinking about silver a lot. It's the mother of gold, and it's
Ooh.
harder than gold. And so it's
Oh.
more sort of durable. And so it's interesting, like there are all these little clues and residues and evidences in the manuscripts, like you're in the presence of silver or the moon when you see very like sort of various containers or vessels, because silver has this capacity to like hold and harden, and then like gold gets birthed. I love the idea of like silver being the mother of gold and the moon being the mother of the sun. Very interesting. So that's
I
what
love
the
that too.
silver back made me think of.
Very cool. I love that. I'm definitely a moon person. I was born on a full moon and I'm Cancer, so moon's my planet.
Moon's your planet. And wait, what's your rising again?
Leo, so sun.
Right. But so your chart is like ruled by the sun. Like the sun is steering the ship of your chart, and then the moon's powering it. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm a moon inside. I might seem like a sun, but I'm a
Your
moon
heart is a
inside.
moon. Your center is a moon. Yeah. Yeah, and like the devil, like in like sort of Christianity, the devil and God are sort of like opposed, but in these like sort of pre-Christian modes of thought, like we could see Mercury, or Mercurius, as the alchemists called him, as both, because he's like this trickster who has these like devilish like qualities and capacity to fuck you up, and then also he is sort of the center of the whole alchemical and astrological situation in a way.
Very cool. And that makes more sense. It's like before the binary. Get rid of the split. Like it's all really all kind of one.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I love these languages because they sort of teach that like it is all about like opposition or contraries, like sun and moon, Venus, Mars, but like the idea is like Mercury separates them out so as to bring them back together again, changed. So there are all these different kinds of languages and different modes and images for really just like separation and marriage, and like how entities and energies get named and come apart and split and then come back together again, change like over and over again. very kind of contrary to, I think, a lot of our thinking now.
Yeah, I love it. I love anything that's not Christian thinking. I think it's too much imbued in our culture, and there's like many other ways of being that are not that. So anyway, I can get into those other ways of being and away from that, I'm happy to do so. And it seems like this project and the way you're describing is very much like of our times as well, because we seem to be going through this kind of alchemical period of transformation.
You think? Wait, what do you mean?
I hope so.
Oh,
That would be
oh,
the good result.
oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like,
The
right, I guess,
positive outcome. It's either that or
yeah,
total civilization collapse and we're all dead.
yeah.
So hopefully we transform and survive, at least some of us.
Yeah. Yeah, the transformation thing. Right. I mean, it's interesting. I guess transformation is at the heart of alchemy, but and it's wild because as I was like kind of in this space, and I guess I still kind of am of like going into these manuscripts and looking at the images and the texts, a lot of the alchemists were like sort of fusing their alchemical imagery with Christian imagery, especially in the Renaissance. So like you get like all of a sudden it's like Christ is like what's born at the end or whatever. But it's interesting because yeah, I mean, it's alchemy and astrology has like, it's like a pharmacon in a sense, like it both sort of can like uphold Christianity or it can dismantle it. It sort of it can do both depending on like who is practicing it. So yeah, there's a curious relationship to it because there was a time when astrology was like not condemned by the church. And I've been like on my Substack every week I do a different like canto in Dante's Divine Comedy, which is obviously like very Christian, but he was like very into the fact that he was a Gemini and like really like sort of he was kind of ambivalent about astrology. He was sort of very into it and reading the stars all the time, obviously, but then sort of condemns divination and fate and augurs as well. So there's something going on there.
Yeah, so really it's a tool and people can use it in different ways, I guess, depending on their worldview.
Yeah, like all technology, I guess.
That makes sense. And then also makes sense how you bridge it with current technologies and forms of art and cinema and things like that.
Yeah, I think I mean, to me, that's where like it gets its zhuzh, you know, kind of have to keep like re-enlivening it or just
not just reading dusty old manuscripts. Where do you find these things?
on the internet. Just got to know the kind of right. They're like a different ancient text websites and stuff, but also, I mean, yeah, I had to do quite a bit of digging around, like in the I mean, I guess really part of it's like I did this out of a weird devotion because I feel like learning about alchemy and astrology and like how they work together totally fucking changed my life. And so I'm sort of trying to add something and make it a little easier for people. So there's like a huge resources list as part of it and stuff. So I spend a lot of time like Virgoing the fuck out of a lot of the alchemical corners of the internet. And yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a fascinating tool for reading the world, really. Because like we can be like, yeah, like she's a Sagittarius or she's a Virgo or whatever, but really it's sort of it's like, I don't know, it opens doors in ways that other things I've found have not, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's how I feel about cut-ups. That's why I'm a cut-up proselytizer.
Yeah.
Because I read about cut-ups forever and I liked all these artists. I realized at one point that all the artists I like all did cut-ups in different ways. And then I was like watching YouTube videos of like William Burroughs giving talks and stuff. And he's like, you should go and do this. Anyone can do this. It's really easy. You don't even have to write yourself. Just grab a newspaper or a magazine and cut it up and see what it says. It's amazing. And then it like hit me. He's like, he's saying that we should do this. And not just watch him and go, oh, he's cool. Look at what he does. That's really interesting. He makes a lot of books.
This was Burroughs that said that?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's so funny.
But I can't imitate his voice, but
Yeah.
you should go do this. And it just like hit me finally. He's like, oh, he's telling people that they should go and do this. I was like, maybe I should do this. And I had written a paper about these artists who also use the cut of method, Genesis and Lady J. Briar Peorage, and I had it with me. And so I just decided, okay, I'm gonna do this and see what happens. And it changed my entire life changed. So
Damn.
yeah.
How
It
did
was
you
like literally like that year. Well, I moved into my own apartment in 2015, and it was like first time I had like my own apartment by myself in New York City, like have made it and arrived. And that's how I decided to like consecrate the apartment when I went, when it was empty. I like brought a candle and I did these cut ups, and I was like, wonder what would happen if you consecrate a space with cut ups. That was the first cut up I did. And then like I just got obsessed with it and started making these cut ups. And then I realized my friend Caitlin Foisey, who I made cut ups with for a period, like in this third mind way that Burroughs and Geisen worked, where they worked together really closely. I worked with her, and then she talked about, I was still thinking kind of more, I mean, like I liked magic and astrology and stuff, but I was still kind of thinking of everything as like psychology, like, because I'm a psychologist. So I was like, these are all tools that people use like in their mind. But Caitlin is very much like a witch, and she like, talks to different entities and gods and things. And like those, they are not just in her mind. And so Caitlin was like, have you noticed that when you cut up people's writing, like they come into your life in some way? And I was like, huh? And she's like, it like manifests things. So like if you want to bring someone into your life, you like can cut up their writing. And then I realized that this conference that I'd made with Carl, like every single person that was in the conference that was alive was coming to the conference either as a speaker or an artist or a guest. And they were all in my cut up box. And then like all the people who were dead were not there, but they were like, we had an art gallery show at the same time. They were like all artists there. And it was like, okay, then my psychology brain is like, well, those are the things you're interested in. So, of course you cut up the same people that you invited, but it's like, that doesn't mean they all had to come. Like none of these people knew who I was. I'm just like this random girl, like some like Val Denham I contacted on Facebook. I'm like, hi, want to come to my thing? You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, I was like, oh, so like I put all these people together in this box. And now like when we were in the gallery and like talking to everyone, I'm like, now all the people that like talk to each other in this box of words that I have are like actually here and like walking around in this physical space. And that just kind of blew my mind and like changed my whole idea of like what you can do and like magic and how it works. And yeah, now I'm just been on that trajectory. And then I met my husband, and yeah, now I live in Sweden. And this now all I do is cut ups instead of like psychology. I mean, I'm still an analyst, but it's not like before all of this, I was kind of like a normal analyst with like a private practice, and I was very like blank slate, and I write about these artists that I like, but like that doesn't really say much about me. And now I'm just like, fuck it. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. I love it. Yeah, that's interesting because I mean like alchemy head, but that, or astrology head, or they're kind of they're sister sciences, but that cut up, then it's like this really interesting melding. It's like both Mars and Venus are present in the cut up, because you're like, Mars's nature is to sever and cut, and Venus is to bring together and merge and congeal. And so it's this like way that Mars and Venus are like being lovers and ex-lovers together, and like in the arena of words.
That makes sense. And Mars and Venus for me are right next to each other, conjoined in my 10th house of Taurus.
In your career house. Oh, so Mars and Venus are like holding hands, like in bed together in Venus's Earth house.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. See, it makes more sense. It keeps making more and more sense as they go along.
My Venus is in the underworld in Scorpio.
Scorpio. Very nice. Yeah. And so you're bringing forward all these unconscious processes.
Apparently. Yeah, that was like the beauty of Carl Jung, who was another person I never like intended to study, but he just kept coming to me because you can't like, fuck with alchemy without running into him over and over again, because he sort of recognized that the alchemists were at work upon their unconscious, and did a lot of amazing alchemical writing himself, and sort of rose a lot of these people from one place to another. But
Carl Jung, I feel like, because you also study like contemporary, like philosophy, like academic style, like
yeah, like
you
regular stuff.
teach that too. But
Yeah.
I really am upset at how like poo-pooed Jung is in
Oh
like
yeah, everyone
academia.
hates him in that world. It's all
Everybody hates him and basically writes him off as like going psychotic. And
yeah.
like I even, in my whole trajectory, like I was like being a straight and narrow psychologist for a while, and like I said, everything's
You had Jung's
psychological.
trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. I tried to do what Young did, totally. And even like in the past couple of years, when someone asked me oh, do you integrate Jung at all in your like work? I'm like, no, no, no. Freud and Lacan, Freud and Lacan.
Right.
And then I realized, obviously, I integrate Jung.
Yeah.
Hello, like I love synchronicity, etc. So now I'm
Yeah.
kind of seeing myself more as like bridging like Freud series, Jung series, and Lacan series, like using all of them because they're all great in their own way. And why can't we do that? Why do we have to like pick like, well, Lacan said this, so that means Jung was wrong about blah blah blah, whatever. It's like different people are different and different things work for them. So why does one have to be wrong and the other have to be correct? I hate all these little camps.
Yeah, that's a really good point about academia and its problem with Jung. Yeah, because you run into him in like the occult world, but he's been kind of, yeah, you're right. He's been
Yeah, and
eye
in pop
roll.
culture more generally, I think more people in like mainstream culture are into Jung than are into Freud or Lacan, for example.
Because Lacan is like, I mean, in my view anyway, like
Pretty
I'm not
inaccessible.
ever gonna like kick back with the fucking Lacan seminar. Like it's just insufferable. I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. I to me, Jung's writing feels more accessible and alive. And I think because I don't think we're sort of in, or academia anyway, I don't think it's quite into the idea of like a collective unconscious, right? That's the problem with that's
Yeah, but I think that's really short-sighted because
I
like,
agree.
any indigenous culture, free or cultures, other cultures, like clearly we're like some sort of collective humanity. Like it seems kind of absurd to think otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think right. And to me, like having come to Jung after I came to like ancient astrology and alchemy, it was like, oh, of course, he's saying things that these people have been saying for centuries, but in a different way. And it's totally brilliant. It makes sense to me. But did you see that movie? Now I'm having a free association moment. Did you see
Great.
um what the fuck is it called? A Dangerous Method?
Yes.
Thoughts?
It's Cronenberg, who I love. I think Keira Knightley kind of ruined it for me because her performance is like, I don't know what she was doing with her jaw, but overall
What's
the
going
fact
on?
that Cronenberg made that story is like, yeah, beyond candy for me. I love it.
I love it too. I love how he it's almost like Freud and Jung writing bitchy letters to each other. It's totally great. It's amazing. Yeah, I like that movie too. I
Yeah,
feel like
their correspondence is amazing. They wrote to each other like almost daily for like 7 years.
I love their correspondence. Yeah. Yeah, there's actually an interesting book that I just read called I think it's called Jung's Studies in Astrology by Liz Green. She's like a Jungian analyst and astrologer, and she went like into his library and archive. Like I think his family is like famously very protective of his work, and they kind of invited her in some way, as I understand it. And the book is really amazing and well
Oh,
researched.
wow.
And there's some correspondences specifically about Jung's mystical inclinations, and Freud being like kind of interested himself, like sort of like, yes, but we have to keep this, we have to make this a science, and people already think we're batshit. We can't go there.
Exactly. No, Freud was totally into it, and he did like thought transference experiments with his daughter, with Anna Freud and Sandra Ferenczi, like all the way till the end of his life. Like he was totally into it, but yeah, he was trying to make it science. So that's why here we don't pretend that we think otherwise. We're just putting everything out there because people need to stop with this posturing because it's bullshit.
Yeah, I know. I know Lacan, or sorry, Lacan, or however you say it, is like, great in his own way, but for some reason I go like catatonic when
It's the whole scene around it. I can't
might
read
be
it
the
anymore
scene, it
right
might
now
be the vibe.
either.
Yeah, it might be the whole, you're right.
It's the whole scene. It's because people just like, I think he's great and really important to psychoanalysis because he ended up breaking away and starting his own thing. However, many people have done that. First of all, like pretty much, I mean, like in New York, there's like 50 different psychoanalytic institutes because they're all from somebody being an institute and breaking away and starting a new one. And then someone break away from that one and starts a new one, and just keeps going on and on. But anyone that can break out of the system is like good for them. But it also took him a really long time to do that. Like he was a medical doctor, he became a training analyst, and I had to like go all the way to them pushing him out. Like, he wasn't a young man when that happened. So like he was pretty rigid in his like place there, but he did ended up being like, who gives these people the authority? Like they grant themselves the authority of saying like, we are the International Psychoanalytic and we say you cannot teach this way. And it's like, what point can you like start thinking for yourself? Like, like if you're an MD and then you're a training analyst and then you've been teaching for like 10 years, are you not allowed to have your own thoughts? Like, and like teach your own way and develop your own method? Like, it's ridiculous. Right. And the fact that psychoanalysts have created that kind of system like boggles my mind because, isn't the whole point of psychoanalysis to figure out like how these systems have been like placed in your mind and like how you're being controlled by them so that you can get out of that and think for yourself and like move in the world like in your own way. It's like we're supposed to be getting away from that kind of rigid thinking. Like, why are the institutes set up in a way of training people to like stay in that kind of authoritarian system? It makes zero sense to me. And that's one way I really respect the Jungians because they've kind of always stayed out of that system. They're not in academia. They don't have these like insane training analysis things. Like they're like, they're much more like trusting people to like, okay, you study and then you like are able to work, like you don't have to like be in training for like 10 years after your doctorate. It's insane. It's like completely insane.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't realize. So it's more training to be like a Freudian, or it's like more years.
It depends on the school, but no matter what, like somebody has to give you a little stamp at the end saying like, now you're a good analyst. But it's like, if you go through all of that, like, are you really thinking for yourself? Like at some point, like you need to just start thinking for yourself instead of regurgitating what other people have said. And that's the problem with like Lacanians, even though a lot of my friends are Lacanians, but the whole like scene is that like you're just regurgitating what this master said and you're not really thinking for yourself. And sometimes when you ask people questions, like they can't explain it to you in any other language besides the jargon of Lacan, like, oh, objet A and the big other and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, but what does that mean? Like you're saying with the Alchemists, like how do you make it current and relevant like in relation to other things that are happening that people actually work with and understand? But they can't do that, and they actually don't care to do that for the most part because they like being this little esoteric society of people that only know the jargon and can only talk to each other. And to me that's like totally deadening. It's like wanting a position inside this kind of like little hierarchy of like who can say the most jargonistic paper, like everyone else
Yeah,
confused.
no,
You know
it
what
drives
I
me
mean?
batshit.
It's like, I understand what you're all saying, but I'm not interested in that at all. Like, please speak to more people out there. And that's why, like, I wrote a book called Scansion and Psychoanalysis and Art, where I talk about all these different artists. Because after I got into the cut-ups myself, I was like, I should write a book about these kinds of artists and like how to use these methods. And it has a lot of Lacanian thought in it, but it has no jargon except for the title, which I didn't realize until like a normie friend of mine was like, I finally read your book and it's really good and accessible and well written, but I didn't read it for so long because I was like, what is this scansion word? I was like, oh shit. I like purposely wrote a jargon-free book, but I put a jargon word in the title.
Yeah,
So I
it's
guess
like
that's my ambivalence about being accessible or something.
yeah,
But
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a poet, so accessibility is a weird idea for me too. But yeah, I'm like object petite, who like I just sort of I really struggle with that. But then I agree, it's interesting, yeah, with the whole Jungian. Like I hadn't thought about it like that. They've sort of always been
their own thing. They're
over
doing their own
there.
thing.
I think that's why, I mean, I'm like not a Jungian and I'm not an expert but I think just the whole world of academia and like what's acceptable and what's not, and the vibe around the sort of stifling atmosphere. It's just why I've just always been rogue. I just can't do
I'm
it.
rogue.
Yeah,
I have
we're
to be rogue. And I even heard someone say recently, like, as an academic, like, oh, what they wrote was very like popular facing or popular facing. I don't know, something like that, but like it was like facing towards like the general person, and that's some sort of like
That's
insult.
bad. Oh God.
Yeah. It's like okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I heard someone say, I'm not sure who said this recently, but something like as we move forward, like the terms like left and right for politics aren't even going to be as relevant. It's going to be more about like who's speaking to people, like the population versus like something like an elitist, you know, enclosed regurgitative mode. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think a lot of, I mean, academia like fancy themselves like mostly like leftist, but I don't, but the attitude is not.
It's not, and the practice is not. That's the thing.
No.
It's like yeah, it's like you're supposed to be for the people, but 99.9% of people have no idea what you're talking about and don't even know any of these concepts or people that you're talking about. Actually, it's like very esoteric.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested. Like, this is why, I mean, it's harder and harder, I think, to just like find little spaces or pockets to think, because I think because it's quite hard to think for oneself, maybe even more so now with the internet. I don't know, but that's what I try. I mean, it's like kind of what I attempt to do in the classes I teach, right? It's just like, I'm not going to tell you what I think. I'm going to present you with these things and we're going to talk about them, and like hopefully you can figure out what you think. But there has to be a kind of space that's created where it's okay to like get things wrong or to like say something that's weird or whatever it is, and not like be super enclosed and uptight, which is, I think, what academia breeds, which is not good for free thinking or even learning how to think, which involves a lot of like back and forth and getting it wrong and saying fucked up shit, maybe, you know.
Yeah, and discomfort, exactly.
Yeah, right. It's not comfortable. Exactly. That's the thing. But we're really all about like having whatever the current, what are the words, like, I mean, what is a safe space when we're talking about thinking, you know, what like
You have to be able to think through it no matter what it is.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned, I think before we were recording, that you took the class of repetition that I did at GCAS, and I remember at some point telling someone that Lacan was not God. I was talking about something. He's like, "Well, Lacan said da 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 da," and I was like, "Lacan is not God." There are many people that think many different ways that don't even know or look on things. And we can teach that in a philosophy course.
Yeah, right.
That was my takeaway from that class. That's what I remember. Telling someone that look on was not good.
Repetition. Yeah. I I in the first set of recordings I did for this alchemy project, I talk about lead and Saturn, and like, so there's a lot of like Melancholia talk, and like Durer's famous engraving Melancholia 1. And Julia Kristeva talks about in a book called Black Sun, which I really like parts of. She says that the speech of the sad or the melancholic tends to be repetitive. And like, so there are a lot of exercises or prompts in that recording that have to do with repeating. But it's very interesting because a lot of the kind of hallmarks of the melancholic mode are also like poetic devices, you know. Refrain, obviously, repetition, like echoes, elongated speech, or logic that kind of deliquesces into nonsense. So yeah, there, I mean, so to me, like, that's what's so much more liberating and imaginative about these astro alchemical modes, is like, it's like they're always happening, but then we have like kind of not regular, but less jargony and more like, it's like a re-enlivening of everyday speech, because it's like, okay, oh, like you're repeating a lot, maybe there's like something Saturnine going on, and like, how does that relate to melancholy or the color black or whatever it is, you know. So there's like this web of associations that then becomes available, as opposed to just like, I'm repeating a lot, period, end of sentence, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And not pathologizing it. Like that, all
Yeah.
of these things have a place in some way.
Yeah, I mean, do you know James Hillman?
Yeah.
So he's the one who kind of initially got me into Jung a little bit, and I'm like very obsessed with his alchemical writings. And he says he's like, we're talking about alchemy to get us out of psychology and out of the language of pathology. And he says at some point, alchemy is a kind of history of madmen at work upon themselves, which I love. I love that idea. I mean, so the alchemists are, in a sense, like language mad, which is what we are as writers or cut up people or poets or whatever. So it's like this way of like starting from a place of bewilderment or chaos or silence or total confusion, and like maybe making our way through some kind of clearing, and then possibly coming back to confusion and again, but like on the way finding new language, really.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, I have a Hillman book cut up in my cut up.
No
Now
way.
it went from being a box to now it's a trunk, a big chest. My cut up chest. I cut up The Dream in the Underworld.
Good one.
It's very good for cut ups.
He's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I love his lecturing voice too. He's like really, what was the word? What was the derogatory term? Populist facing or something?
Yeah.
He's that, but in a good way.
Definitely. Definitely. We have neared the end of our time. Was there anything that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to?
No, I mean, just, yeah, this alchemy thing is the new, I guess it'll be released on the 13th, which is Saturday. So people can order it whenever, if you're into that kind of thing. And then, I mean, I'm a practicing astrologer. I work like mostly with artists, but really I work with whoever. So that too.
Very nice. And everything's available on your website, which I will link to.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. And send me your address and I will send you this book because you need it.
That's so sweet. All right, I'm going to send my address after this.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
It's fun, right? It's fun to just see what happens. That's why
Like
when I go on other podcasts and they have all these questions prepared, I always feel like we're in a flow, and then they like throw us off track with these like questions that they came up with like before we talked. So I just like to like either read
flow
people's stuff
state.
or look at their website and just see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just grateful that like Jim is still like tornadoing through my brain. And
Yeah.
also weirdly, I had a full circle moment just now with like the Lizard King,
Yes.
because alchemy is so much about like crowning what's low, like sort of crowning what's apparently filth. So there's a lot of like weird crowned lizards in that world. Oh my God.
See?